Hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Back to the Light. I am your host, JD Reager. With me is my friend, musician Jeremy Scott. Jeremy, what's up, man?
I don't know. I feel like we missed some content just because right before we started rolling here, we were talking about death and remote controls, and you were asking Eric
Heavy
if he wanted
stuff.
to take his pants off. I was like, oh, so it's that kind of a party, you know?
Well, it can be. I let the guest sort of guide the tone. So if that's where you want to go, we can go there.
We can pivot. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were saying off camera that the last time we had a full-blown conversation like this was remote during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And a lot has happened since then. You put out a solo record that I was a part of.
Yes.
And then also you did a whole Raining Sound thing.
Yep.
And so let's try to pick up from there.
Okay.
And let's start with Bear Grease.
Okay.
Which now you've had a long time to live with.
Yeah.
With having released an album named Bear Grease.
Fair.
Now, how are you feeling about the record now? Because clearly, if nothing else, it helped you. It got you to where you are now with this band.
Oh yeah, it did. I don't really go back so much. Every once in a while after the fact, I'll go back and maybe revisit something that I was involved with. But usually sitting around listening to myself sing is not really my idea of heaven,
Sure.
So,
same.
But yeah, I think it turned out really well in terms of the way it sounded and the collection of songs and everything and the performances that Graham and I, because as you know, like 98.7% of that album was just the two of us. So, yeah.
And originally you were telling me that you had envisioned the album as being pretty low key.
Yeah.
And that it ended up being more of a rock album than you intended.
Yeah, it still wasn't quite rock per se or whatever. I think my brother's reaction upon hearing some of it was something on the order of what the hell are you doing? But and that's always a fair question. But I do think it found like this middle spot. I guess kind of where maybe a lot of the Americana bands inhibit, or live in. I think it came out pretty well. Obviously what I was going for in terms of really kind of like, I was thinking along the lines of maybe or something, by Skip Spence. I was thinking that kind of vibe, but A, that's not really in my wheelhouse, and B, Aquarium Blood kind of gets there better than I ever could anyway. It's just what you have to do kind of at the end of the day is look at the songs you have and just let them take you in whatever direction they're going to do, because the songs always dictate, how they need to be played or what the song structure is. I find, trying to force a song is difficult. A lot of times you just kind of have to sit with it a little bit, and it'll tell you whether there should be an extra verse or a bridge or a solo or how long it should be. And then from there you can figure out the best way to put it across.
How involved in that process was Graham?
Well, being the drummer, fairly, but I think a lot of it had to do with when we started tracking those songs. It was mostly me on acoustic guitar and Graham on drums, and then we'd fill everything else in later. So it's a little unusual, I guess, in that respect. But yeah, I think that's why it has the tone it does, because a lot of it was acoustic based, but and we dialed back the drums somewhat from where they are now, I guess, but not all the way. So it kind of lives in this middle spot.
And then when it came time for you guys to put together a band, how did you approach that? Did you know who you wanted straight away?
We talked about it, and I kind of thought, I don't know that there was a big revelation, but I kind of thought, having known Mitchell Manley for a while, I thought that he should be involved, and we hit it off, and the three of us really did. And then I was like, well, nobody's going to confuse me for Jimi Hendrix, so maybe we need a second guitar player. And so I thought about Noel Clark because we had played before in Fresh Flesh. I played bass in that band and dug what he did on guitar. I think we had tried to do something previously, but the timing wasn't quite right. And this time he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And Noel, I don't know if you knew really what you signed up for, but here we is. So that way we had like a 4-piece band, and we could do interesting things with guitars and harmonies and stuff.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you got the band together and you're playing the material for Bear Grease, but in the live setting, it ended up rocking even harder.
It did. It was going to, just because, I mean, it's really, I find that it's hard to really kind of put the quieter stuff across live. And I have a lot of respect for people who can do that. I don't know that I'm one of those people. I do appreciate it, but it just seemed like our strengths went toward volume.
When did you know that it was a band and not your solo backing project?
Pretty quickly, because everybody brought their own thing to it, and that encouraged me to write things that were not on, well, obviously not on the record, but kind of gradually becoming a little louder, a little bit more like maybe something along the lines of, like, say, Patron of the Arts, but, you know, not 18 minutes long like Patron of the Arts is. You know, that sort of thing, a little bit more, I don't know if stentorian is the word I'm looking for. Maybe I just wanted to say stentorian. Maybe that was the deal. Yeah. Anyway,
it's a good word. Fair,
there it is.
Fair usage.
Yeah. So it just kind of gradually became that way, and it just felt like, because Graham started really letting loose on the drums, and we just it kind of felt like we found ourselves once we started doing that.
And you know, you went from, I think the first couple of shows you just played out as like Jeremy Scott or the dreaded Jeremy Scott band moniker.
I hate that, man. It's like the laziest thing, man. I really wanted to have a band identity. I didn't want to just be me. I used Jeremy in the Drip Edges for a while just because at least there might be a little bit of recognition, you know. But,
and tie into the record that you were supporting at the time.
Right, exactly. It was kind of a transition.
And but ultimately you decided to drop the Jeremy. Was that for band unity, or just because it seemed to me that you were a little uncomfortable performing under your own name? Yeah,
generally, you know. I mean, I'm not really like a look at me kind of guy so much. I realize that promotion is necessary, but I'm really involved in the music thing because that's why I'm doing it. You know, it's these days there's like so many hats that somebody's got to wear to get their shit out there. And, you know, of course, as that developed, in the process, I got older. So, you know, it's hard. And then you juggle that and like a full-time job and this and that.
Was the band, you know, were they pumped that you wanted to go that direction and take your name off the project?
I don't think there was a discussion about it. I just kind of did it. I started just billing it that way whenever we had another show.
So you did a dictator move to turn it into a democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the reverse of what's going on now. Not to go there really, but you know,
do you want to talk about the responsibility of an artist in today's troubled world?
Well, the short version is you just got to keep doing your shit.
Yeah.
Is it. You got to put blinders on to a certain extent. And I don't mean you can't be engaged. You should be engaged with what's going on. You should know what's going on. And take whatever direct action you can. But also from a creative standpoint, you shouldn't let what's going on impede what you're doing if you can at all.
Yeah, you know, honestly, and I hated to almost laugh at that question because it just felt a little bit like a hack question, but it's a little, I mean, the shit is real.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm almost surprised that there hasn't been a more, you know, open response already from the artistic community. It seems like we've all just been hit in the gut and don't know what to do.
Yeah, and that's got to change pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
It needs to be happening. I think things are happening, but it's just the complete shock of everything that's going on.
Yeah, I as a podcast host who is supposed to talk about things, you know, for a living, I don't even know how to address it.
Right. It's
honestly.
Yeah, it's a really big
and that's
thing.
What they want. It's
exactly.
A shock and awe campaign, and it's sadly it's working.
Yeah, it is because it's just there's several prong attacks and everything. And
did you see he just I'm not even going to say his name, but he just made himself the head of the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, which is just it's
to
like
usher in a golden era of culture, and I'm just like,
yeah, culture is.
It makes me want to throw up even saying that.
Yeah, I know. But that's why it's important to really create your thing, to be, to develop your own thing, to be free of, well, I don't know, free of that, but like, in response to, in retaliation, that's got to be one of several things that happens,
Yeah.
I mean, you not to go back and talk about the 60s so much, but that was part, back then, there was a response like that. And it wasn't unified per se, but it was coming from a lot of different angles, There was a lot of creativity going on.
And it was kind of expected.
Yeah.
It's not like today, a lot of people say, shut up and play.
Yeah, and there's several reasons why it's different now than then, but that doesn't mean that, we can't revert. And I think that's part of what we're going to have to do, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, uplifting, huh?
Yeah, that was our political moment on the
confetti,
podcast.
Yeah. Bye, kids.
Let's yeah. Now that we've addressed the elephant in the room,
right?
Let's get to your new record, somewhat self-deprecatingly titled "Kicking the Tires on the Clown Car." How did you arrive at that title?
It's a phrase that stuck with me. It's actually a lyric that I was working on for another song that is not on the EP. I have not finished that one yet.
Classic.
It just felt like it might. It's a little ambiguous, but without really getting into it, there's a few different things that it means for me. So I just felt like it was also something that could potentially grab attention because that's what we want to do. We want we like what we're doing and we want people to hear it, and that we want to continue doing that. What we're really doing now is we're working on trying to achieve national obscurity as opposed to regional obscurity.
Well, I think you're on your way. The other day, as we were setting this whole thing up, my friend in Chicago texted me, and I can show you the text.
Yeah.
Just randomly, he was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band from Memphis called the Drip Edges?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Yeah, funny enough, I was just texting with them. We're setting up a podcast thing." He was like, "Yeah, they're getting their song Animal is getting played on Chirp Radio."
Chirp, yep. I sent it to Chirp,
Well,
Chicago
you're getting
Independent. Yeah.
You're getting played.
They have played.
And I think my friend Tom might have purchased a copy of Bear Grease because of it.
Oh, yeah, I did see. Yes, exactly.
So, hey, Tom, say what's up to Tom.
Hey, thanks, Tom. I'm sending it out soon. I promise. I think I've got mailers left. It's happening. Seriously. And thank you.
Well, anyway, so you're well on your way there. When did you guys start working on the record?
God, sometime between the Mesozoic and Paleolithic eras, it feels like. It was really...
Do you start them on your own? I mean, how developed are the songs when you bring them to the band?
Pretty developed. There may be some lyrical changes here and there, but by and large, they're kind of pretty far along toward where they're going to be, I mean, if you look, people like to say songs are my children. How many times you heard them? Hey, songs are my children, which is kind of weird, but okay. But
it's hard to pick my favorite.
So I mean, yeah, exactly. If we're gonna say that songs are like children, then I would say that by the time I show them or demo them for these guys, maybe they've reached puberty.
I was about to say they might be in the preteen years.
Exactly. The difficult teen years. Yes.
Did you record it here with Graham?
We did.
Same setup.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's where the drums are usually set up and everything. And I mean, that doesn't change. Everything around here, I swear, every time I'm in this room, it's different because he's got some new contraption or Dimahachi or whatever.
Do you find? I mean, Graham is between Infinity Stairs and everything else he's got going on. Is it hard for you guys to get together?
Well. It can be. We're developing more of a schedule as of late. What was kind of reassuring is that as we're talking, he's just stirring right now. We just talked with him. He was sleeping,
gently stirring.
So yeah, that it's encouraging in the sense that is the first evidence I think I've had in a while that he is sleeping. With all the stuff that he does. I mean, it's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was briefly in his band, and it seemed like he was busy then, and he's only doubled what he's been doing since.
Oh yeah, I mean between this and Cloudland Canyon and the lighting stuff,
stuff
with Marcella, and it's
Are you guys tempted to try to integrate some of that visual element into your show?
So for this show next week, I believe we are doing some kind of light show.
Oh, cool.
So,
do you want to plug the show while we're talking about the show?
Well, why don't we? So the release date for the EP was January 10th, and
of course,
Friday. Of course, because I would schedule it when a snowstorm is about to happen, because that's my luck. But so the show we had scheduled as the EP release show that night got postponed, so we rescheduled it for this coming Saturday, a week from today, as we're talking, the 15th.
15th at the Lamplighter, and it's a matinee.
Yep. Because people like that. You hear about people saying, I don't really go out as much, or I don't like to stay out late. Well, fortunately, this starts at 3:00, so we're good there. It's not a show that's going to run that late.
Is the record right now? It's only available digitally, right?
Digitally only. Yeah, it's hard to find somebody that's going to press up an EP. It's kind of like no man's land. But because you have an album, people do albums and they still do 7 inches, but EPs are kind of a little rougher. This thing.
No thought of doing it on like CD or something?
Not really. Formats are really strange things. People. CDs, I don't know how many people really have CD players. I know some do. I know some people are pressing up CDs. I understand it's cheaper now. My car doesn't even have a CD player at this point. It's a 2019. People are also doing cassettes too, which is really, I don't understand.
Well, I have a cassette player, so I get it.
You do. You're probably one of 8 people in Memphis that does.
Now, you'd be surprised how many cassettes get sold at Shangri-La. There's a lot of people rolling around. I think there's a lot of people with Walkmans, honestly.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
God, we're going to maybe I should do 8-track.
But I think, honestly, part of it is just having something to sell. Like, people just want to buy it, whether, whatever it is.
True.
Whether they have the format or not, they want to have something that they can buy and support you.
Well, in as much as there is a master plan to what we're doing, I think part of it is that we want to do another EP's worth of songs and put them together as an album.
Oh, okay.
I'm also writing for like a full length. It's actually really... Weirdly, with everything going on, I've been writing a bit recently, so things are coming together. We're going to have 2 new songs next week.
I saw the charts over there.
Debuting, yeah. So, and those, I'm always excited about new songs. It's always like, what's next? I'm always thinking ahead, even before this EP was finished, I was thinking in terms of, what's the next thing, so we can start planning that.
I want to ask you about a couple of songs on the EP in particular. One, which is Everything's Gonna Have to Be All Right, track 1, I think.
Yep.
Which it seems, I dare say, almost like an attempt at writing something positive or uplifting.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know. I guess I was in a good mood that day. It happened really quick. It really did. It's some songs, as some songs, you labor over, and then some just demand that you handle it. Okay, so for instance,
do you find the quick ones are better?
Sometimes. I'll tell you what. Like, I was in the car, and this doesn't happen very often. And in fact, this particular instance only happened once. But as Graham and I were working on the Bear Grease record, I was in the car one day early, I think going to work, and that song, Your Ice Cream's Gonna Melt One Day, like basically just dropped in my lap. That day, everything was done. I went to Graham's that night and said, I know we were going to work on this other song, but I want to try this because I'm really excited about this. And we did the backing tracks and probably most of the track that night. And that's the only time to date that's happened. To me.
Cool. That's one of my favorites on Bear Grease.
Well, then I guess it works in that mode. But it's very rare to have that set of circumstances line up where you're able to do that. Because especially since you may not have access to a studio, or you may not have booked a studio if you're doing it someplace else. But fortunately, it was at Graham's back house in his old house, and we were able to just launch into it.
Lyrically, what were you trying to get across with that song?
It's a little bitchy. I think, and I'll preface this by saying that the narrator voice in a lot of my songs, sometimes it's me and sometimes it's not. I did not think that this voice saying those words in that song, that's not necessarily my opinion. I guess, I should put a disclaimer at the beginning. That's
what Corey Brandon would call an unreliable narrator.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's a little bitchy. I don't necessarily mean it to be a misogynistic thing, but it can be taken that way. But obviously, once you put something out there, you don't really have control over what people think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite "Look at that stupid girl," but
no,
but I could see that
thing, and and that's a nasty song. I like it, but let's be honest, It's not something that,
Yeah, I'm probably not going to cover it.
It's not even a case of like, will it fly today or not? Independent of that, it's probably not a song that I would go to and touch, or like be in that mode. But, that's part of the thing today, though. I'm not saying that everybody should be able to say whatever they want, no matter who it hurts. But sometimes there are nuances that get lost.
For sure.
I'm not saying that Stupid Girl has nuances
No.
or ice cream. I'm not saying that necessarily either, but I think that there is a danger. You can overdo things.
Everything's gonna have to be alright. 'Cause we are who we are. We come this far. Everything's gonna have to be alright. What we got's gonna have to do for now. What we got's gonna have to do for now. It's good things to be found. Everything's gonna have to be alright. Let's remember what unites us, not what was apart. Third party second guessing, it's good for the heart. There'll never be a better time to throw the shackles off this town. You can keep your pie in the sky, I'll take my dinner on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Everything's gonna have to be alright. Everything's gonna have to be alright. But I ain't like today. Feel pretty okay. Everything's gonna have to be alright. 'Cause you know who we are. We come this far. Everything's gonna have to be alright. It's gonna have to be alright. It's gonna have to be alright.
Well, Jeremy, can you introduce the band?
Okay, so on the drums, we've been talking about him, the man whose place is, this is his spot, Inner Sanctum, Graham Burks Jr. And we have Mitchell Manley on bass over there. And next to him, we have Noel Clark on guitar. I mean, clearly you can tell the instruments on there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, you guys sound like a well-oiled machine. You'd never know that you haven't been getting together every day. I mean,
well, that's nice. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, I have a question for the band. We talked about this on the podcast earlier, but the decision that Jeremy made to sort of transition from this being his solo band to being the Drip Edges and more of a full democratic band. I mean, what did that transition mean to you guys? I mean, because it very easily could have just continued on as Jeremy and the Drip Edges or the Jeremy Scott Band forever.
To me, I think it just sort of happened organically, right? I mean, Jeremy and me started playing with you like half a decade ago or more now, and kind of gelled. I think playing drums and bass together behind some of your stuff. But then I think when he brought a solo album in here to record it, it was supposed to be an acoustic record, and it just kept getting louder and louder the more layers we put on it. And so before long, we realized we needed sort of a rock band to support these rock and roll songs that he was bringing in. And we added Mitchell, and then Noel joined the party not too long after that. And then, it was just so natural. Like, I just think that like we could get together once every 2 months and just feel like we hadn't missed a beat. So I just think that the way the band was playing felt like a rock and roll band. And so I guess Jeremy wrote the next batch of songs with that intent.
Was it?
I'm speaking for you, Jeremy, but I think you brought in a batch of songs that kind of fit the sound that was organically kind of coming out of these four dudes. So.
Tend to write, at least subconsciously based on, who I'm playing with at the time and everything. So you want to work to people's strengths.
Yeah, I think once I joined the band, like you guys had kind of conceived of the Bear Grease record before I showed up, and then, I heard Ice Cream, some of those other songs. I was just like, oh, Jeremy Scott's one of the greatest songwriters I've ever heard. Holy shit. And so then I was like super glad to be able to join. And I think me playing in a lot of like heavier rock bands kind of brought a little bit more oomph to the groove there.
We know how Graham and Jeremy got together, but how about you guys? How did you guys get hooked up with Jeremy?
I guess I came.
How about when you first met? How about that?
Yeah.
That's kind of story.
Well, so I know Noel from way back in Jackson. So I knew Noel from like long before he joined the band. I used to come and watch his band Greenwood in Jackson, Tennessee. And so that was cool. But as for meeting Jeremy and Graham, I guess I didn't meet you until I actually joined the band. And I think I met you sometime during the time that you were, when I guess Alyssa was doing some mixing on the Bear Grease record. And I was like,
or even before that, because remember when she was doing stuff at Move the Year when it was on Madison, right? Yeah, like very famous, because I feel like I met you and Josh Stevens around the same time. Yeah. Obviously, y'all.
I guess I heard Ice Cream and just went ape shit over it. I was like, man, it's so catchy. Couldn't stop listening to it for days, and so I just kind of shoehorned my way into like, hey, Alyssa, come and sit next to you while you mix some of that record or whatever.
Yeah, and I met Jeremy through an old band, Fresh Flesh, where we lost our bassist a few months in, and Alicia Trout asked Jeremy, basically, will you come in and Jeremy came in like knowing like all the songs immediately. It was just easy fit.
Dude, so what had happened was, so I remember telling you, it was at Murphy's.
Right,
it was you and Alicia, and one of you said, well, Eric, our bass player, we're not going to be able to do anything for a while because he's moving to Albuquerque. And I was in my cups a little bit. I know. And I was like, oh, well, I can sit in on bass. And Alicia was like, oh, yeah, cool. So I woke up the next morning with maybe a mild hangover, and there's all these files in my hand.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and we're rehearsing on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Basically is what happened.
She don't F around.
Right, no, not at all.
The band sort of started around Bear Grease, which is a more, acoustic, mellow thing. But what do you guys think of the progression into more of a rock band?
Oh, I'm loving it for sure. It's definitely up my alley.
I love to play too loud.
I mean,
it's a good fit.
I'll say as the last person to join the band, I was practicing along with the record, and now I would come into practice and it'd be like everything that I just thought I figured out at home does not fit with this band. The sound is not right. The parts are not right. So it was like me catching up to everybody else already moving towards, this direction, and me just being like, okay.
And also as an opportunity for you to bring your own thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that worked out really well too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dirty Sound, which is the song, one of the songs you played at the Christmas show.
Yeah.
Which also sounds a little bit more like Bear Grease.
Yeah, that one does. That one actually, I can say this, right? It's basically that one. That is the one track that's basically all me. Graham and I did percussion on it, but everything, it's basically 2 acoustic guitars. It's that Mellotron over there. And
are there horns?
It sounds like a horn, doesn't it? Almost like a trombone. No, it is a guitar. it's the Gretsch that I was playing on most of the EP, put through one of Graham's pedals. It's actually a for the guitar nerds out there. It's a one of those Moore slow engine ones, like mini pedal. It kind of works as a volume swell.
It really sounds like brass.
Yeah, it's weird, you know, and it's also it's probably slightly out of tune to the acoustics, which are in tune with each other, but
not in tune with the world.
Yeah, probably not. Probably none of this is. But I kind of like that effect. I like old recordings where not everything is in tune or in tempo. I think, you know, at this point, everybody's worried about things getting, you know, being just so or whatever.
Yeah.
I am completely okay with leaving certain things out of tune, whether it's an instrument or like a vocal. I mean, I don't get like all real like, you know, 1992 era Guided by Voices with it, but you know, I think that's good. It creates a little sonic intrigue, you know, because if everything's just dead perfect and whatever, it's not only boring, or it's not only not honest, it's boring too, you know?
Yeah, I use a metronome a lot just because I start a lot of songs by myself. So I record a guitar track to a metronome so I can then go play the drums on top of it myself. But I totally recognize that you lose a little something in that sort of song construction.
How much do you want to get into this sort of thing? Because actually I have something that relates to that. We were recording Animal.
Yeah.
And there was a back and forth between the four of us as we were recording it as to whether or not to use a metronome. Now,
Animal, that's the song they're playing in Chicago, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, they're playing several, but yeah, they have played that one.
Well, that's the one my friend said he heard.
That's cool. So Animal is the one cover on the EP. It's by a band called, a vocal group, New York area vocal group called The Tokens. You may remember The Lion Sleeps Tonight, you know.
Sure.
That. So they went on and they did this album called Intercourse. I swear to God, that's the name of the album, Intercourse. But it's kind of like one of those albums. There's kind of like this subgenre, I think, in that era, the late '60s, where relatively straight bands would try to go psychedelic, and that's some of my favorite shit because it's just so.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah. So their version, we changed it around a little bit. But that middle part, the Lovin' Has a Way, you know, you notice it's like their version. You notice that the tempo is a little slower. So from a perspective of trying to use a click track or a metronome, that made it definitely more difficult to do. The funny thing about it is that we wound up for the take on the album, because we tried it about 4 times. The take that's on the EP does not have a metronome. And the funny thing about it is that
well, for one, it's the song that you would think you could use a metronome the most because it's got the hits and the stops and all that stuff.
But then what do you do when it slows down?
Right.
And that was the problem. But we wound up doing it. It slowed down. We sped back up to where it was. And Graham was like, I would just want to check something. So he checked the BPM. And this is a testament to how steady that guy is, how Graham is. I can't remember the numbers, but it went down about, I want to say 6 BPM to the middle part. Came back up into the body of the song, and it came back up when we checked within 1 BPM of where it had been.
Oh.
1. I mean, that's pretty good for a human.
Yeah.
You know? So I was...
Graham's rock solid.
And I just felt the he is. And I just felt the continuity was better to do it that way as opposed to trying to use a click track. You know, I think that there was... I think everybody was kind of in favor of using the click track. And I'm like, I just didn't say anything. I just said, well, we'll find out. And I was right. Sorry, guys. It's no big secret, but hey, you know.
There seems to be a kind of a running theme, certainly in Dirty Sound, which is where we started with all this.
Yeah. Sorry for the tangent.
No, it's cool. Yeah. I mean, that's we're here to tangent.
Yeah.
But self-deprecation is a theme of yours.
Yeah. It's a defense mechanism from when I was real young. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of us people listening, can relate. It's just, you'd rather, punch yourself before somebody else does. That was as a kid, that was kind of a thing. That song is another one where it's kind of like a maybe not an unreliable narrator, but somebody who isn't necessarily me. And
is it about a town that's not necessarily Memphis?
No. Oh, no. It's actually, okay, so in the second verse, it's in this villa of ashes. It's Asheville.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, because I was inspired by a former bandmate, Quinn Powers. Quinn Powers Activate. Hi, Quinn. So Quinn moved to Asheville years ago. And a couple years ago, maybe it was during the pandemic, he had a video and he was playing guitar, but he's using a different name, like a stage name or whatever for a minute. And I thought that was pretty funny. So, in this Villa Ashes, I think I know the game, stick around a round or two, might even change my name, came from that. That sort of thing. And the song, it's not Quinn as the narrator either necessarily, but it's kind of like somebody who's frustrated and he isn't being heard, and he's real serious, maybe like an auteur or whatever. And that bridge where somebody's telling him he's just a child, that takes the piss out of everything else. Does that make sense?
Sure. And you can see why I would immediately think Memphis.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, because there's a lot of children in Memphis?
Or
a lot of grown adults masquerading as children, or vice versa?
Sure, but also just a lot.
I didn't say that.
There's a lot of artistic frustration.
Oh, well, yeah.
In Memphis.
I mean, everywhere, but I can understand that it's here. It's hard when you're not in industry town, and now I'm not saying we should be. I mean, look at Nashville.
Dude, Memphis is music. What are you talking about?
We want to get into that? All right.
That was a Music Foundation joke for all you old school peeps.
I am going to be everybody's enemy if I get into this too much. But no, it's fine. I think that really it's difficult. I mean, it's a difficult playing field for anybody right now who isn't spending money for a PR push or to get plays on Spotify, whatever. I mean, I guess I could play that game too, but that's not why I got into this. I didn't get into music to maintain a fucking spreadsheet of all the people that I've sent stuff out to and this, that. I am doing it, but that's not my main thrust. You know what I'm saying?
No, I know it. It's deeply frustrating. I never once when I was a teenager dreamt of keeping records or learning how to use
or having a tickler file
Excel
or reach
spreadsheets.
Exactly.
I never once dreamed of that.
I'm going to put all my contacts in a pivot table. How sexy.
Yeah. I'm going to see if Constant Contact is going to work as a solution
Jesus
for
Christ,
us.
We're in the old days. Maybe you do a direct mail campaign. Can you imagine?
I want to pound my head into the microphone.
Geffen Records, here's this new Nirvana album. All right, kids. Hello, fellow kids.
Do you have any thoughts about what you guys might play on the show when the band shows up?
Oh, for this? I do not know. The plan was kind of to just have a rehearsal and go through stuff, but we'll go through whatever, and maybe we'll play one of the new ones and see if that passes muster. We've only done it like 2 or 3 rehearsals, but they're really coming together, both of them.
You're cutting it a little close.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to keep it. You got to keep it fresh, and there's that sweet spot too. I mean, that's why I kind of want to record these pretty soon too, because there's a sweet spot in learning a song before it can gel or it can congeal.
There are some people who believe, you got to work a song on the road and you got to play it 1,000 times and let it,
that can be true.
Figure out the crazy new ending that we never would have figured out if it wasn't for that drunken night in Iowa or whatever.
Yeah. So I think it's funny you mention that because I think it can work both ways. But if I do have one criticism, it's not even a criticism per se about that last Raining Sound record that was done during the pandemic, is that we wound up getting this stuff together pretty quickly, and it sounds good, given that, and it stands on its own without knowing that even. But like, I do wonder how different they could have sounded, maybe better, if we had the luxury of taking time and going and playing out and trying these new songs out before we recorded them.
And also with developing more chemistry with an additional member of the band.
Right, exactly. And that was like pretty last minute too. So I mean, there were a lot of things going on. There wound up being a lot of moving parts. We made it work, but every other album we were touring or playing out with these songs. So when we went in the studio, we had them kind of where we wanted them. But I do think that you can just over-rehearse something to the point where you just take the life out of it. It's a delicate balance.
Did you feel like that last Raining Sound record was a fitting end to the group?
I think so. Yeah, I do.
Did you have any idea that it would be the end of the group when you were doing it?
I looking back, I kind of half suspected. Nothing was communicated that way. Greg wasn't telling us that, and that decision was not formally made until a while after that. But kind of thought I was just trying to savor it because I didn't think there would be an opportunity to play with these guys again, and I enjoyed it. It's great. They're my brothers.
Have you, I know things ended a little weird for you guys.
A little, but it happens. I don't know that there's any way to really stick the landing when you finish a band out,
I don't even know. Are you guys cool now?
Yeah. We're fine. I just talked with Alex the other day.
Yeah. At the Overton Park show, supposedly the door is left open for a future Raining Sound reunion only at Overton Park. Have you heard this?
Oh yeah. Oh really?
Yeah. There's some sort of asterisk to the end of the band that they're allowed to play at Overton Park again.
Where did you hear this?
It was something on social media, I thought.
I love how I'm just finding out about this now.
Well,
that's hysterical.
I was trying to put a positive bow on it.
It's cool. I'm
like maybe there was hope for a future reconciliation. Something
I'm
like
always
that.
open to it, but obviously it's not my call. So
right.
Yeah. I'm just right now. I'm just enjoying continuing to write. I finished something maybe an hour before I got here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun for me. It's just very therapeutic, I remember reading this thing. It was a Willie Nelson quote, and I might be wildly paraphrasing. The general thrust of it is like, he's like, I find songwriting to be therapeutic, the way somebody else might find taking a shit therapeutic. So there you go. Songs are not children. Songs are apparently fecal matter. So, but it's a release. And then when you do kind of really nail what you want to say, there's nothing like it. I'll work and rework lyrics and stuff. This one, I've been tortured all week by the song that I just finished. It's just because it's like, this is going to be so good. I'm like, but I'm really screwing it up with the lyrics. It's not quite getting there, but I think I did get it. We'll find out. You let it sit for a bit, and then you come back to it in a couple days. And if you don't hate it, you move forward.
Do you know what I admire kind of about you?
What's that?
Is that your love for music runs so deep. Like I feel like we have experienced a similar level of career frustration. I think that I identify with, and that I think it makes me feel closer to you in a way. But
come by, yeah. All right.
You're just so fucking into music.
It's just I'm just a nerd, and I think some people
no matter
find that
what
detriment. It's just there's always something going. There's always some song in my head, but sometimes you're like, when the downfall of that is when you're writing, you're like, where did I take this from, or you just rework stuff because you want to get it as good as you possibly can. And what you need to remember, what's the quote about the perfect being the enemy of the good?
Oh yeah, for sure.
as if the good needs more enemies right at the moment. But, sometimes you just got to say, I'm done, walk away from it, put the pencil down, and then, figure out how to flesh it out and make it as good as it can be.
Do you ever think about like what a world would look like where you weren't a musician?
In darker moments, maybe, just because sometimes everybody has frustrations. Everybody who's a musician has some point where they feel like they're beating their head against the wall, like even the most successful people and everything. One thing that does help when you hear other people have those issues, I don't know if you've ever checked this out, but do you know who Joe Smith was?
No.
Joe Smith was I think he's first a radio guy like in the 60s, and then I think he was the president of Warner Brothers and I think Elektra later on. But in the 80s, he was putting a book together, and he did 200 interviews for the book. And those interviews, the audio is available through the Library of Congress, like the Joe Smith collection. So we're talking about like a lot of movers, shakers, 50s through the 80s. I mean, we're talking people like, I think Bo Diddley is in there, Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac, Boz Scaggs, David Lee Roth, all these people. And just to hear, sometimes they get into very, it's sort of universal things, frustrations that they've had as well as, successes. So that does help. But yeah, every once in a while I'll think about it, but most of the time I can't really imagine not doing music one way or another. That was a really long ass answer, wasn't it? But,
no.
I mean, there's times where you're just like, well, fuck this. I need to deal with this aggravation like I need a paper asshole. Let me do something else, but those, thankfully, those times are pretty temporary. And then you come back to it and you're like, okay, now that's out of the way. I honored, like they say in therapy, whatever, I saluted that emotion, and then I moved on. But sometimes you just wake up the next day and you're like, okay, I can do this again.
What are, at this stage in your music career, like what are you hoping to, are you in it to have fun with your friends and exercise creative muscles, or do you feel like that somewhere deep down, like you're still out, are you still trying to make it?
Well, it's hard to really think about making it in an industry that values, among other things, youth when you're 53 years old.
No, I think you could go Americana at this point, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. It's an appropriate hat to wear, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no, back in Raining Sound days, when we first started the band, we were older. Greg and I were the younger guys, because we were like within 7 months of each other. We were like in our late 20s. So already some industry people would be like, oh, that's too old, to which I say, go fuck yourself with 40 grit sandpaper. But I don't think you should put a date on things. And a lot of times the music gets better as you get older. So I wouldn't say in terms of like, having untold fame and riches, that's not really my goal. And it's not like I think that this music would achieve that anyway. It's basically to push myself creatively, try to help, be with other people who want to push it as well, and just get it out there and have people enjoy it. And then what happens from there is gravy. But I think really that's where everybody should kind of start, the Garden Party by Rick Nelson, right? What's the line in there? You can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. Truer words never spoken, ever.
Yeah, I go back and forth between that sort of a sentiment and also that, like, music is, if you're, there's nothing stopping us from just playing music in this room. And like the reason to put out a record or to play a show is to share it with other people.
Exactly.
And have that shared experience.
Yeah, it can.
So you're also hoping to please them.
Well, you can't, again, it's a balance. It's not necessarily just exclusively just creating for yourself and whatever, which is great. But for me, if I just do it and I don't really share it and I'm not collaborating on some level with other people, it just feels masturbatory, maybe just a little kind of insular and whatever. And I think the purpose is to kind of get it out there and kind of have people respond to it And I think that's really gratifying too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's an important piece of the equation. And obviously you're playing live. You want to, you just really want to have this thing where it feels like a communion, you know? I mean, last August, for my birthday weekend, Lauren and I went to see Red Cross twice. We went to Nashville and Birmingham.
Great band.
And it's their best fucking band on the planet.
In fact, I think I've seen Red Cross. We've seen them at a show at the same time at the High Tone.
Growlers, right?
Or I guess now, was it the High Tone still at the time?
It was
maybe
Growlers.
Oh, okay.
2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and it was also, what's also gratifying is knowing that they're really big Raining Sound fans, the McDonald brothers. But the point that I was trying to make with this is that the Birmingham show was at the Saturn bar. And
yeah, I've seen Not a Surf there.
It was not anywhere near packed. You know, there was a healthy crowd, but and I think other bands might be like, well, what the fuck? You know how people get like Dispirit or whatever. So this is brilliant. So about 3 songs in, Steve McDonald says to the audience, "You may not be the biggest crowd we've played for on this tour, but that doesn't mean you can't be the loudest." And turn that shit right around. I mean, it didn't start off bad, but I mean, it's just like everybody, the buy-in was great. The people who were there wanted to be there. Like nobody wandered into that show by mistake. If they did and they got their hair blown back, that's fantastic. But, you know, I was up front and I saw to the 3 people down to the left of me, you know, there was, it looked very much like a mother-daughter combo. And very probably the daughter was not alive when I saw this band for the first time, you know, in the 90s. But they were both grooving to it. And I thought, man, it's great when it brings people together, when it brings generations together, when people who may not agree on very many other things in life, they can come together and say, that's a great fucking song. You know? That's why you do it.
For sure.
Well, can I ask you guys to do something really goofy? Can we get just like a huge, like an obnoxious rock and roll ending for the end of the podcast? Yeah. You know what I mean? Just like a big Metallica. Yeah, just really bring it home as if, you know, we're at the Pyramid right now in front of 16,000 fans. Yeah, give it just ultra cliched rock and roll ending. Yeah, here we go. Let's do it.